Happy Emancipation Day. And thank you for spending another Sunday afternoon with Let's Connect with Dr. D. Today we have as my guest a young man who is emancipating himself and his community by being the best version of himself. As soon as we come back, you will get to meet him.
Respect for life, respect for life, all life matter.
This afternoon, I am excited to interview Saibhon Rogers, entrepreneur, and welcome, Saibhon, to Let's Connect with Dr. D.
I am happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming me to your program.
Great. Now, Saibhon, I think you were in class with my son. So
yes,
I think you were in school together.
Yeah.
So I know that growing up in Tobago has been quite interesting. You know, being from his era, I could imagine the stories that you all have to tell. Tell me, where did you grow up in Tobago, and what was that like for you?
Me growing up in Tobago, I was always a bit nomadic, if you want to call it that way. I had roots in Mason Hall, roots in Cutler Hall and Goodwood. So that's where I shared most of my experience, as a lot of my time was spent by either grandparents' house, one's in Mason Hall or in Cutler Hall. So that was my experience.
Wow, so you pretty much had vacations all the time, bumping from village to village.
Yes, it was like that for me because my parents would work full time, and every afternoon after school you'll have to find your way to our grandparents' house, enjoy your afternoon with your cousins until you were picked up from there to go home at Goodwood. So that was my experience. So most times it was either Mason Hall at my granny's house or Cutler Hall by my grandfather.
Now, in one of our previous episodes, we had young lady talking about her time growing up, picking up, I think, crayfish by the riverside. What do you think? What are some of your stories of living in these villages?
I never had that much of that type of growing up style because most times I would spend with my grandmother, who was classified as like a hustler or a trafficker in those days, where she would like pick mangoes and green pomsitail and those kinds of things to take it to the market. In Trinidad, she would take the slow boat down to Trinidad in the night. So most of my days, once it wasn't at school and it was summer vacation, would be spent with her doing the picking or experiencing that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, where she would hire like 2 young men to pick the pomsitails and those things. Well, I was pretty small at that time, so my job would have been spent below, picking up wherever I'd fall and trying to eat as much as I could before she caught on to what was happening. So that was my experience. And then after that, my granny went on to have a store in the market. No, she had a store uptown by Royal Bank there. So then time was spent there because parents wouldn't leave us at home alone. So it's always wherever granny was next, doing a hustle like where we were as kids.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I would send my children to cash in the drugstore with their grandparents, and I'm sure you learned a lot spending those times with your grandmother and understanding the role of business.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was an opportunity where you had to do a lot of watching and learning, and there were a lot of information there that you could have picked up from her haggling the tree owners to get the best prices, to her negotiating with the van man to take the produce home. So it was always that kind of environment. And then from there, sometimes I would even be lucky enough to journey with her to Trinidad on like the panorama, and then that whole exciting hassle of trying to find a nice spot on the boat to sleep on the ground and that kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun on that side. On the other side with my grandfather, that was a little more quiet and a little more peaceful and a little more how to say, what you'll be expecting. We spend most of the days in the yard playing sports and football and stuff, but for some reason that idea that I had with my grandmother was transposed to that environment, and then me and my cousin would be selling popsicle from the various fruit trees in front of the house. So I guess that was kind of the spirit of how my childhood would have been most of the time. After that, summer vacations was spent with my cousin. He had a plumbing company, and always trying to just be with the bigger cousins. I would always go and work with them. So that was another way in which I would have spent my childhood. So it wasn't very fun like that, river and picking up pumps. Yeah, it wasn't like that for me.
Yeah, but I mean, you get to define fun. I think we all get to define fun. And I could imagine that, you know, what you learned being with your grandparents and understanding the business aspect, that is something you definitely didn't pick up in school or in a book. I mean, having an experience like that is really incredible.
Yes, I do appreciate it a lot, and I don't think that any of the theories of business or economics would have taught me those things. I mean, it would have given me a scientific explanation behind things that was happening, but the organic and the
life happening of it.
The life happening of it was not necessarily something that I would have expected to learn at school. And I really appreciate that background that I would have gotten from those experiences, and it was fun. It was fun. I must say, it was fun.
So your grandmother, who was into business, she was in which village?
Mason Hall.
Mason Hall. And then your grandfather, he would have been in Calder Hall?
Yeah, Calder Hall. So that's Baratel, Calder Hall.
Okay. And so in Goodwood, what would you do for fun?
My experience there was very limited, as it was just a place you would go to sleep. That was my experience there, because it was just always 6-7 days a week, just going from one grandparent's home to the next, to school, to extracurricular activities. So my actual home, where my bed and stuff were just a place to sleep, and it's still like that for me up to today, because I work at least 18-hour days, and then when I go home, it's just to go to bed. It's just how I was cultured. I don't have a other reason for that.
Burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I think it's a blessing that we have had growing up at times, to be able to have that extended family, the grandparents, where, you know, if your parents are busy, that you could actually go to your grandparents' house and, you know, be engaged there and not left, you know, to your own devices. But we don't see that happening that much anymore. I mean, I remember when I went to my grandparents' house.
Yeah, to me, I always see it as a blessing, because it was a place where a lot of information was available to the ones who wanted to get it. It was a lot of fun, it was a lot of camaraderie, and it was a lot of family. And I think that is when my love for my family grew, as it even transpired into my life today, in terms of me now having a business, and almost 90% of my employees are immediate family, and then the other 10% could find some way of mapping themselves to be a family member through some kind of pumpkin vine situation, if so to speak. So 100% family run and own business right now that I'm involved in, and I'm very passionate about it. It could be difficult at times, having to be the youngest for the most part, and having to navigate that space and being the authoritative figure and the managerial figure at the same time. So, but I enjoy it. It, however, gives some ball patches some places, but we working through it and enjoy it as much as possible.
Well, that's good. Now, when we come back, I would want to hear all about what it was like in school. You know, what are the things you did? What did you study? So as soon as we come back, we'll talk about that. Welcome back to Let's Connect with Dr. D. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and stay with us every Sunday at 6 p.m. We have on set with us Saibhon Rogers, who's about to tell us what was school like, in Tobago. What school did you attend?
All right. I don't know how far back you go because normally when you write a resume, they just talk about the most recent stuff. But I went firstly, I think it was Ethiopian Orthodox preschool in Dallas Spring. That's where I went to preschool.
Yes, I know that place very well.
That had a lot of interesting experiences for me. Is where I fell in love with the culture for Rastafarianism, and I even went on to kind of pursue that path for a short while in my teenage years. Had a priest there. I think he was visually impaired. A lot of times I was forgotten in school, and I'm going to put this out here because this time my parents faced the truth about it, and I would spend a lot of afternoons waiting for them to come and pick me up and thing. And I actually had a lot of experience with him, and he was very influential as part of my story. Even tried to taught me a few letters in Braille and stuff like that. So that was enjoyable. I remember that very vividly. Then I went on to Scarborough RC. RC experience is always fun and enjoyable and filled with a lot of memories and interactions that always force you to come outside your comfort zone. So that was an enjoyable experience there. Then I went to Bishop's High School.
At Scarborough RC, were you allowed to swing over the sea? Was that still there when you were in school?
I think it was there if you were allowed to. I don't think you necessarily was allowed to. But we did it.
I think in my day we did it. In my day we did it. And you're not alone. I got forgotten at school too.
Yeah. And then we went to Bishop's. Bishop's was an enjoyable experience for me. For me, school, the academic side of school was never a challenge for me, to be honest, and it was always something that I took for granted, and I never knew I was necessarily a smart individual. I just thought I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was only until placing in the top 20 in SEA when that kind of conversation came about me being smart, and then a certain level of expectation grew from there. But apart from that, it was more or less a fun, enjoyable experience playing football and participating in almost every sport possible in school. Then Bishop's was enjoyable as well. And then university, I went to UWE St. Augustine. I did a BSc in economics with a double minor in environmental economics and management studies. And then lastly, I did an MBA at Anglia Ruskin in entrepreneurship, innovation, and leadership.
Now, when you were coming up in school, what thoughts did you have about what you wanted to be and what you wanted to do?
I think I always had a great passion for business, so business was always what I wanted to do. How I would have gotten there, I was not quite sure, so I never was too sure about which direction I would take to get there, but that was always something I was passionate about. I always consider business to be my passion and my purpose, and it's something that I had a lot of experience with at a young age in terms of seeing other business persons around in my crews and extended family participating, and it was always something I always wanted to get into, but I always wanted to get into it doing it better, because for some weird reason I was able to see the mistakes that people have been making and always knew that it had a better way. So then I guess it was a kind of natural part to study business in school so that I could have that more scientific approach and a more research-based approach to conducting business to hopefully do better.
Now, I could imagine, taking the experiences from your grandmother and then the theoretical part of it, that combination must be really, taking you places. Oftentimes.
It does because it has some level of how to say it. I don't want to get too into that realm of things, but it has a certain level of spiritual connection where you know what you're doing. You can't really explain it just yet, and it could go with the flow in a certain level of confidence in yourself. And I really appreciate that as always feeling like, I have those experiences at my back. Although I might be young, those experiences still guide me, and I'm very much confident in the decisions that I make, and I don't usually have to second guess myself.
Yes. Because oftentimes you find some persons who they get the training and the degree, but they've never had the experience in business. And then you have others who have the experience in business, but don't necessarily have the further, technical or theoretical training as part of their background. So I could imagine, yes, the combination should, take you
the
far.
ability to explain to yourself phenomenons that are occurring, and the ability to read your balance sheet and your ability to navigate that more structured side of business is a blessing, as it gives me the window into using economic principles to kind of plan for the future, look back and readjust and that kind of thing. And it makes you feel a little bit more safer at times, and at sometimes it's a little bit more frustrating because you have this side of you that telling you to wing it or to just be confident in yourself, and then you have this side that's saying slow down and run the numbers and be patient and be research oriented, and not every idea is a brilliant idea, that kind of way. So
yes,
I enjoy that playing with those, or finding the balance between those two sides of myself.
Yes. So your grandmother or your grandparents must be very proud of you now, with exhibiting and perhaps building on the foundation that they were able to give to you.
Yeah, definitely. Most times when my grandfather heard my ads play on the radio, because he's in his 80s now and he's at home most of the time. So when he hear my ads thing, and then the other day I might come and check him or whatever, and then he'll be repeating the ad for me and that always warms my heart, and to make me know that he at least things. So now he actually nicknamed me the captain, because the whole idea behind the anchor and the nautical team. So that is thing, and is so those things are very enjoyable. Hearing him repeat the slogans and some of the catchphrases for some of my ads on the radio. So those are enjoyable things to experience. And then my granny does always call me ever so often to check in and find out if I'm praying and all those kinds of things,
Very good. Very good. So they're keeping you on the right path.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, you went to school at UWI in Trinidad, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is it for, you being away from home in a different environment, going to school? What was that like for you?
I have always been very independent. Never had to be babysit by my parents. I can't remember one day my parents helped me with my homework, so that it was never an issue where they had us to babysit me. And then the move was a little bit more organic for me, because I already had experiences of traveling over to Trinidad and spending time there, because my father lived there and worked there. But when I moved to Trinidad, I was on my own for a while, because he wasn't stationed in Trinidad anymore, and I had a house to myself, a car. So it wasn't an experience where I would say that I was suffering or anything like that, or one of those uncomfortable university stories. It was just pretty much me doing what I was supposed to be doing at that time. It was only difference for me is that I was always defined by groups and being in groups with a lot of friends and things that kind of way. But my university experience was a little different, because all my friends would have split up at that point, and most of the time I was spent on my own, and I was spent a lot of deep thought and reflection and planning for the future, which I really enjoyed, because I think it gave me an opportunity to slow down and be very thoughtful in what was coming next.
Definitely a young man ahead of your time. And when we come back, I will hear all about your entrepreneurial pursuits at this time.
Have respect for life.
Welcome back to Let's Connect with Dr. D. Saibhon Rogers is with us in the house. So, Saibhon, tell me, what inspired you to start, the business that you have now? Tell me about that.
Well, coming out of university, I've been fresh back and booming with ideas. I spent the first couple of weeks and months just working on different business ideas and looking for the perfect opportunity. Because what had happened, I would have received a couple of scholarships while I was at university, and I saved up all that money in an effort to start my first business, because I never wanted to really depend too heavily on my parents to fund that first venture. So I would have a little store of cash in and looking for opportunity. It was either I was going agriculture first, or I was doing this first, or whatever. And then I was going through Facebook and I saw the tendering for the bar, and I said, this is a good first opportunity, and I put my foot forward, and it was fruitful. It was always something that I was always interested in to contribute to my community and to contribute to the tourism product of Tobago. I always felt that I had some ideas that could have worked and could have changed and could have created a niche where I saw value could have been added, and the way in which we package and sell our product could have changed in the space. So that idea was always there. So saw the opportunity and went after it, and the rest of that is history, or the future tense, I don't know, because we're still doing it.
And the name, how did you come up with the name? Tell us about the name.
To be fair, I was never that good creatively with names for things. So I would have 17 business plans in front of me with no names. But however, my girlfriend at the time, she helped me come up with a name. She gave me about 3 or 4 options, and I just, choose the best one that I saw. But at least I had a theme. I knew I wanted the name to be nautically related. So that was the name. And then when she said Anchor, it was like Wildlife Paradise, and then that was where the whole idea came together.
Okay, so what is the full name for our guests to know?
Anchor Bar and Grill Limited. That is the full name. Mm-hmm.
All right. And you have a full service menu. I know you're like my second kitchen.
Yeah, we do. We really tried our best to create a menu that was both contemporary, yet it still had that Tobago flavor. That we also wanted to make the guests that came to us internationally and both locally have fast food that tasted homemade at the same time, had that organic and that flavor of Tobago, with all those things that you usually would order when you go to a beach bar any part of the world.
I love your fish.
Thank you. I would tell my
fish.
I'll tell my mom.
Yes.
I can't take full credit for everything.
They take time to do the seasoning. It's not just fast food, it's seasoned fast food. It tastes like home food.
Yeah, we really take our time, and every time we do the process is always done over with love. As much as every time I try to use that scientific business side of myself to try to standardize process, in order to still get back from all my family in the kitchen, talking about the whole idea of it being done with love, and it has to be done with feeling. You
definitely get it, when you taste it. So how did COVID impact on you? And it's been a rough time for everyone. How did you manage through that?
The hardest thing so far with the COVID was the inability to plan for the future. That level of inconsistency and the shutdown startup that has been really difficult in trying to navigate, even from simple things as purchasing of stock to managing overheads to trying to keep everyone employed at the same time, because I still feel some level of responsibility for the people that I would have hired, and asked them to work for me rather than to work anywhere else. So it was always that balance. And sometimes in the earlier part of the COVID, when you thought it was just something that had been short-lived, you try to, you know, use some of your own personal resources to, you know, hold over, and even when you're supposed to only have one staff, you're trying to hold two, so that was difficult. Also trying to move with the time, you know, the product would have to shifted a lot, because it was some of our Friday entertainment was more culturally associated with Tobago folk dances and all that kind of thing, you know.
Yes, I remember that.
Necessarily appreciative of that, and you know, was the whole party vibes, and then the beach vibes was a little bit more not as laid back because people had less time to have fun. So it would have allowed me the opportunity to innovate. It would have also forced me to be flexible. However, that flexibility sometimes has become very annoying because you had this vision in your mind for where you want to go, but now it's more about trying to be how to say this, trying to be feasible in the conditions that we have left with us. But we are still here, and we're trying to, you know, push the takeaway and the deliveries and those kind of things. We have an app on the way as well, and a website which is supposed to help us connect more with the persons that are trapped outside, as well as provide a little more visibility.
Definitely, I can see you putting that masters to good use, the innovation and leadership. Yes. Now, you know, you said you've also diversified into the area of construction.
Yeah, well, in the start of the COVID, diversification was the whole theme that was rampant, and it was something that was forced on us in the private sector, rightfully so. And it would have just moved up the timelines. It was always had plans for that, but because of COVID, you know, you have to move a lot faster in certain areas rather than faster in the other areas. So I would have started my contracting company, so that's Anchor Superior Contracting Services Limited, and we offer landscaping, general contracting services. And so far I've been very grateful because it took off, and we have a couple of clients now, and we're doing good work, and we are grateful for the opportunity to still be earning revenue.
So what number can we use to contact you for all those services?
You could call us at 480-6801.
Okay. I have one, you know, if you had to, you know, young people now come out and they tend to want to go and work with the government. In Tobago, it's the Tobago House of Assembly, and sometimes shy away from, you know, getting into business on their own. What advice would you put out there for young people?
It has to be something that you're generally interested in, because it's a lot more difficult than it might seem. It has to be something that you'll be passionate about, because for those difficult times you need that passion to push forward. You want to think through thoroughly your decisions and what you want to do and what direction you want to go. And it is something that I would advise, but it has to be very much strategic in the approach, because to be honest, the private sector is a place where you actually left on your own, and it don't necessarily provide the security that you are accustomed to working in the public sector. But however, there are mechanisms to counteract those situations. You know, you set up your insurance policies, your own retirement funds. Those are the kind of things that I did so that I could feel a little bit more secure in the space. So I do have my own retirement policy in personal insurance, life insurance, those kind of things. And you have to be very financially sound in managing, because you have to also prepare for these times like COVID, which we are now entering.
Right. Well, I certainly hope one of your next steps, it sounds like you have the capacity to be there, is to perhaps become a business coach to some other young person in the community who is thinking about, you know, getting involved in business and passing it on. And so I want to thank you so much for being here with us on Let's Connect and sharing your story, which I hope has inspired some other people out there to transform their lives and to see the possible in the impossible. Thank you so much again, Saibhon, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And so I want to thank all my guests for staying with us this evening. I also wish you again happy Emancipation Day to you, and certainly hope that you can join us for another exciting segment next week Sunday at 6 p.m. on YouTube.